Hello, welcome to Comic Book Radio. Graham Nolan is here. Let's get that out of the way right now. This is episode 66. No teasing, no leading you guys on. He's here. He's here. Yeah. Dr. Mask, hey, what's up? Hope you're doing well. We got Kino Reviews in the house. We got Just a Backer here too. Hey, Cam is also here. What's up, Cam? If you placed that bet, you were wrong. You were wrong. Graham's he's a professional. Graham is a pro's pro. You know, if he says he's going to be there, he'll be there. If he says he can't, he can. If he says he needs to reschedule, he'll reschedule. He'll be there. Don't doubt Graham. Shame. No one better bet against that. Ara, what's up, Ara? Hope you're doing well. We got Bretsky in the chat, too. Hey, Reverend Saber. Hope you're doing great tonight. Pastmaster Dan is also here. We got Bear in the house. Bear, what's up? Is Buddha Bear here, too? A battle of the bears. Marcus, what's up, Marcus? Hope you're doing good. We got Rusty Baker in the house as well. So Fritzy Schnitzel. What's up, Fritzy? Hope you're doing good. Thank you for being here tonight. We also have, yeah, look, see, he's there. That's him. That's him. You better not have bet against him. What's up, Wayne? And also we have, let's see, Real Steel. Hey, what's up, Real Steel? And we got a couple other people here. Grape Nuka-Cola. Hey. Blue Teddy Narrations in the house along with Cole King and Manny Cornejo. Hey, what's up? Rusty Baker is here too. Yes, don't adjust it. Don't adjust it. We control the horizontal and the vertical. John's Longbox. Hey, what's up, John? Thank you for being here tonight. Wayne says, best intro in the business. Cup of coffee in the big time. And speaking of which, for those that are channel members, you guys can use the Macho Man emoji now with that cup of coffee in the big time. Billy Glasby, what's up, Billy? Thank you for being here. Norin Rad as well in the house. Let's see, do I got any more hellos? Goody Two Shoes. Hey, Rick Saylor in the house. Massive Panda. Massive Panda. You guys have the most interesting names. Jaded One, what's up, Jaded? Hope you're doing well. We also have, I think that's about it. We got Ruby Jade in the house. Goodness gracious. I don't want to miss anybody, but we got to get Graham on here before he does leave. We got L.A. Munoz. What's up, L.E.? Apologies. L.E. Munoz. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here tonight. We also have, let's see, 6 Ways to Somebody. What's up, 6 Ways? Wiley J. Draws is here, too. And I believe that's it. No, it's not. Tarks. Man, Graham, you are popular. Graham, you're bringing in the people tonight. Tarks9 is here. Bobo is here. Who else is here? Goodness gracious. I think that's about it. We got Holy Hand Grenades is here as well. All right. Everybody, without further ado, let's welcome the man of the hour. Just call him Mr. Universe. Graham Nolan. What's up, Graham?
Who bet against me showing up tonight?
I hope no one did.
That's a bad bet, people.
That is a bad bet. Man,
hey, I see a lot of my friends here. That's awesome. I'm glad you guys are supporting Pete's show. This is awesome.
Yeah, everybody's here for you tonight, man. It's great. Graham, I got so much I want to talk to you tonight, but I want to let you kind of steer the conversation first. Is there anything particularly on your mind?
Yeah, the return of masks. Gets my blood
you mean everyone's returning them? That's great.
Yeah, well, maybe I wish that was it, but that really gets me going.
Oh man, if anybody wants to wear them, go for it. And that's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
I don't care.
Yeah,
wear a Bane mask. How about that?
You know what we should all do? We should just wear superhero masks. I want to get like a Casey Jones mask, and then I think that'll ensure the 6 feet of space. What do you think? I'm running around with Casey Jones mask on.
There you go.
And if that doesn't work, I'm gonna get the golf bag, and with the croquet bat, a hockey stick in there, a tennis racket, golf club, and then that'll probably ensure the 6 feet of space.
It's it. Don't forget the Louisville Slugger.
Exactly. Yeah. Man, oh man. Graham, so you are, I want to talk to you tonight about how you're building your universe. You're building the Nolan verse, obviously, which is a great name for it. But I also want to pry a bit into how you even got started with comics to begin with. And I don't mean necessarily creating. I mean, what was it that when you saw that first comic and fell in love, and then the path towards becoming a creator? And before we dive into that, Rick Saylor, what's up? Thank you for the super chat. This is Hail Graham Nolan, you the man. There you
You the
go.
man, Rick. You the $5 man. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Rick. Thank you, man. All right, so yeah, let's start. Let's start at a logical place. The beginning. What was that? Do you remember what was that first comic where you were like, just wow?
Yeah, I had a teacher bring in a stack of comics for the kids in sixth grade to read during recess or when you were done with tests and stuff. And one of them was a Justice League comic. This is 1974. I think it was like number 113, somewhere around there. It was when DC was publishing the 60-cent Giants. So you'd get 100 pages for 60 cents. And it had all these characters that I knew from other media, Superman from the Adventures of Superman, had Batman from the Batman TV show, Aquaman from the Superman Aquaman Hour. And so, it was really cool. I thought that was really neat. And so then I went down to the local luncheonette in Long Island there where they had a spinner rack. And that's when I saw and bought my first comics there. I saw these, I bought Batman, Superman, Detective, Action, Amazing Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four. Those were the key books for me when I first started.
Any particular creator that you saw their work, and maybe you didn't know who they were at the time, but that creator maybe you found out later on who they were, and
That
they
was
just
John
knocked you
Romita for
away.
sure. He
Oh,
was the
Romita,
first
yeah,
artist who, doing because he did the covers for the Spider-Man books I was buying, and at the same time that the the $1.50 Treasury editions, first one with Spider-Man came out, and it had that iconic, Romita cover. So he was one of the first guys whose work I recognized. Um, Kurt Swan, Irv Novick, Dick Sprang, as a matter of fact, was one too. Because he was in one of those 60-cent Giants. There's a whole slew of Dick Sprang stories, and I loved his Golden Age style.
man. Taking me back too with that, man. With Romita especially, I fell in love with Romita's work, and I didn't even know his name or anything like that at first. It was just like Spider-Man for me, synonymous with Romita. And the first thing I ever had of his art was on a record.
Oh,
Is on this Peter Pan record, the Spider-Man.
yeah,
And that was just Spider-Man to me, and
yeah,
it just and to this day my number one favorite Spider-Man artist, John Romita, and God bless.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, just fantastic stuff, man. So
yeah.
you go from being a fan and a reader, buying up everything, reading everything you can, just falling in love with the art and the stories. What was it that really that was the catalyst for you when you started wanting to make your own comics and draw and all of that?
It was the same
Same
origin point.
stuff. Oh
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
So
mean,
you saw it, you were in love, and you were like, I got to do this. I got
oh
to do
yeah,
this.
yeah. I mean, it was maybe a couple months, and I decided that's what I want to do. I was 12 years old, and I said, "This is what I want to do." And I remember, telling my mom and dad. Now, my mom was a teacher, very supportive of education, and she was artistic too. So, she's thinking, "Oh, 12-year-old, okay, you'll encourage him, but he'll probably go off on other things as he ages and grows." My dad was a cop, and he said his reaction to I wanted to be an artist was, look, if you don't want to go to college, that's fine, but you should learn a trade, learn plumbing or be an electrician or something like that. You have two cousins with master's degrees from Pratt Institute. One of them's delivering pizzas, and the other one's laying brick. So that was his thoughts on that.
And you were like, yeah, but I'm more talented than them.
Well, I'm certainly more ambitious.
There you go. I mean, that
You know,
the right attitude, really. That's it's all about that.
yeah,
Begins and
yeah.
ends with it.
I'm a tenacious person, and when I set my mind to anything, I see it through, and I get it done. And so, at that time too, I didn't realize it, but I was tenacious then too, because I never gave up on the dream. I never, strayed with a backdoor plan or anything. I said, this is it. I'm going to this highly competitive field, which, typically, certainly at the time, it wasn't like you were making a ton of money, because, none of those guys earned royalties or anything like that, or had ownership. Um, and yet, I still persevered, to do what I wanted to do.
Wow. So, when you're starting off into your career, how did that go about? Like, what did you do in terms of getting out there? Did you send submissions in? Did you knock on the door of editors? Did you go to? I mean, did they even do a portfolio type review thing at cons or anything at that point in time?
Well, I never did that. I never did a portfolio review at cons. When I was at the Kubert School, one of my teachers was the talent coordinator at DC Comics, and he sort of mentored me, because he bought two of his classroom assignments from me to run in New Talent Showcase. So that was my first professional sale. It was like 1983, and I used to go up to the DC offices every Thursday, and this is when you could do that, pre 9/11, where you could go up there, and if you could get past the secretary, you could wander the halls and introduce yourself to editors and stuff. It was a wonderful way to show your portfolio, get a face, get a relationship going, that kind of stuff. And that's what I did. I just shook hands and showed
Yeah.
my stuff, and went from office to office. And it's one of those things. It's a small business, at least back then it was. And a lot of editors were looking for, they'd have something across their desk, or something was late, and you walk in and you're like, here, boom, here's a script. Get this back to me next week.
Wow. In a week.
Well, if it was a week, it was probably some short story.
Okay. All right. Good. I was gonna say, holy smokes. Um, you are a obviously we already covered a bit that you're tenacious. You go for it.
Yeah,
But there's something that and I don't want to skip over your mainstream career, but I do want to largely highlight and talk about what you've been doing recently, especially
sure.
building up your universe. And if you do at any point in time want to go back and speak of something within the mainstream, go for it. And if anyone in the chat as well, if you guys have questions too, please feel free to bring them up. I'll do my best to squeeze them in the conversation. But when it comes to creating for you, your own characters, your own stories, was that something that was always within you, and you were just kind of keeping these ideas and stories for eventually one day when you knew you would be outside of the mainstream, or how did that occur?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because when I was working in the mainstream, I didn't really think about creating my own characters, because they already had all those characters, all
Yep.
that whole playground to play in, and there was no point creating something like that to compete with it. Um, but I've always loved telling stories and writing stories. It's just that the mainstream didn't really have the genres that interested me. I didn't want to create superheroes. So when I decided I was going to start self-publishing and stuff, I made a conscious effort not to try to compete with Marvel and DC and what they do, or used to do good. Um, I wanted to do the genres that I like, and nobody's covering. Horror, supernatural, high adventure, um, westerns, even romance. I want to take a crack at a romance thing sometime. Bring that up to date, a modern day, you know, uh, love story. So, there's a lot of stuff I want to do, um, and I just had a couple ideas for some new books just yesterday. I was out back. I get most of my best ideas when I'm out back smoking a cigar, because my mind just
Yeah, let your
relaxes.
mind wander.
And
Yeah.
just I let it wander. I'll see something, and it'll kick off an idea in me. It's like, well, what if you turn that phrase around? Or, oh, that's a great title. And I could. It's exactly how this stuff happens with me. You know. So I got an idea for two new collections
Oh,
that
nice.
I'm going to start to develop.
It's interesting that you say that too about wanting to not create superhero stories in a way. And it's not that you don't love those things, you obviously do, but I've noticed that as well, and I'm sure a lot of people. Cause I see the conversation all the time where they're like, "Why aren't there more superheroes coming out of Alterna or this creator or that creator or whatever it may be?" And I really think it's because there's a lot of different aspects to it. I guess I'll let you answer that question because I have my own thoughts about it. But I noticed that with you, that you're creating these things that are more like horror, western, sci-fi,
Hmm.
and even like you do have already like a little bit of this build up, this kind of relationship romance kind of angle with some of these things in your books,
Yeah.
and it creates a more well fleshed out kind of story and a kind of universe that you're building.
Hmm.
So why do you think it is that most people, most creators that are out there, are not really aiming to create superhero books?
Because it's a flood of it. You know, the best-selling books in Europe and in Japan are not superhero stories. Uh, I want to tell stories that regular people might want to read. You know, not just superhero junkies. Um, and all that stuff's been covered already. I mean, if I come up with a really cool idea for a superhero that's never been seen or done before, that's not derivative, well, then yeah, I would be excited about exploring that. But so much stuff is so derivative. I'm just not interested in that. One of the things that all my books share in is because I've been exploring sci-fi, supernatural, horror, all that kind of stuff, is that they all share the shared genre of high adventure. Because I love, I want characters that people care about. You know, I think that's really, really important in telling any kind of story. Is you can tell, the most benign story if the characters are interesting and if you care about the characters. It doesn't have to be a complicated plot. You look at Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. One of the most interesting scenes is them talking about the Whopper. It's a ridiculous conversation, but you hang on every word because it's interesting, and and you see these different layers to these characters, and you care about them, even if they're shitbags. You care about them, but you want to see what happens, and that's the kind of stuff that I try to focus on is the characters, that they have personalities that are unique and different. And so when a character says something, it doesn't sound like we can plug that same thing into this other guy's mouth.
Yeah, I mean that's the most important thing with stories in general. There was a comment that I had made the other day on a post about I think it was a quote from Joe Quesada talking about that the story is the most important thing, and it's more important than the characters. And I'm thinking I don't. There's so many good stories out there, good plots, interesting enough, but the characters are dull and they're bland and they're generic and they're just
Yes.
a one note. There's a sameness. They're
Hmm.
not compelling,
Hmm.
and those stories get all forgotten because those characters are a snooze fest.
Right.
So
They're
it
not
really
really
starts with that character.
they're not really characters. They're ciphers. They're one note character, one note tricks. Like in modern comics, if they're writing a gay character, he's completely defined by the fact that he's gay. There's nothing else interesting. There's nothing complex about that character in a Marvel comic. There's so much more to explore. When I did Alien Alamo, it was a relationship story with the backdrop of science fiction. It was the story of a father and son is the crux of it, and the father trying to deal with the PTSD of World War II, because it takes place in 1957, so he's still a young man, and you know that was very powerful. And it was fun to explore his relationship with his son as he's going through this shit, and how, without knowing it, what he needed was another war to bond him with his son. Um, and that's the kind of complexity and kind of nuance in a tale that I love to read and that I try to bring to my stories.
Yeah, yeah, it's so important. It's also the thing that allows you to have something that resonates with readers.
Hmm.
Everything, there's so much focus, and I've heard the conversation a lot about relatability
Hmm.
to the point that they've brought that concept to villains. And what they've done with the villain is they've humanized the villain in such a way that you can't really tell the difference anymore between hero and villain, because they all have their sob stories, and it's all like, yeah,
Hmm.
I get why they're that way. You know, that sort of thing. And it's like you can understand why a villain is the way they are without necessarily sympathizing constantly for
Yeah.
them and making up excuses for these individuals. And I don't think that's a way to. You don't have to necessarily make the villain relatable, but you do have to make them engaging and compelling and interesting, and
Right.
that's what's going to resonate.
Right. You don't have to feel sorry for the villain. You want to hate him, but you want to see something of yourself in him. That's why Doctor Doom is so great. He's this pompous, you know, conceited asshole, um, who wants to rule the world, but he still loves his people. He has this weird relationship with them, and I
Yeah, there's
find
a
that
complexity.
yeah, there's a complexity to his character. Um, one of the things I love about Bane is the complexity of his character. Is that he doesn't view the world as a bad guy, that he does bad things. He's like the perfect millennial. He views the world as a victim.
Did you
You
just
know,
say Bane is the perfect millennial?
he thinks the world owes him something, and that every bad thing he does can be justified because in reality, he wasn't innocent. He was a child that was born to a prison sentence of his father, because of those, crazy laws that they had. And so he was molded by his environment into this monster. But that's a deep motivation there, which I think makes him very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And Mighty Joe wants me to remind you about language. All right, so usually I let the guests get away with an S bomb and an A bomb. The F bomb is usually when I bring out the warning.
Oh,
But
did I
Billy,
drop an F bomb?
no, 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 you
Oh,
did not. But Billy Tucci did within like the first 5 minutes. He dropped two, and then that was
I was
quite
just
funny.
gearing up for one, so I'm glad I got
Yeah,
that.
because sometimes we get people who watch the show too with their kids, which is great,
Okay.
because they want to learn about the comics industry and history and whatnot, and they're interested in
Sure.
all that stuff. But yeah, we allow one F bomb, strategically placed, hopefully,
Well,
for maximum
I'll
effect.
abstain from it. I'll use
But
another word.
okay, yeah, feel free. But yeah, so man, that's funny. Bane, the perfect millennial, uh, and that's kind of what's interesting about characters in general, right? They all stem from trauma, and depending on if you're a hero, if that's your personality type, you don't want people to go through your trauma, and if you're a villain, you want them to go through you want them to feel your pain. The world must pay
Hmm.
for what was done to you. And then you can have the mix in between of somewhat a hero who goes down the wrong path and is trying so hard to be almost too controlling
Hmm.
that they don't want people to go through anything bad, that they end up actually doing very bad things, maybe even unknowingly or unpurposefully doing those things. So you can explore all the little gray areas in between, but that I find generally is the larger separation. But when you're talking about creating your own characters, before we dive into that, we do have a question, actually, a couple comments here.
Sure.
Seer just wants to say good luck, and we're all counting on you. Blue Teddy says, yes, please. The romance readers are absolutely starved in Western comics. There you go.
Perfect.
And
A Western romance.
that would be cool. And Rusty says, that is truly brilliant and incredibly insightful. It's why I love reading your stories, Graham.
Thank you, Rusty.
And then we got one question here from Kino. It says, when you were a kid, did you take traditional art classes, figure drawings, or was that all at Cubert?
Um, I took advanced AP art courses in my high school, and then I went to a community college and took those type of traditional art courses, figure drawing, design, that kind of stuff. Um, and then at Cubert's, that's where I really learned about storytelling, and the business of comics. It's one of the underserved aspects of any of these schools, is that they might teach you certain techniques, or develop your skills somewhat, but they don't teach the business of comics, and that's a huge thing.
That is a huge thing. Just in general, too. Most
Yeah.
schools that concentrate on art, it's it
Hmm.
drives me nuts even when I see a lot of comic creators, be so dreamy about it. Oh, just make sure you make the story you want to make, right, and then you'll have success and longevity in your career. And I'm like, not necessarily. There's a lot to it that you have to do to get to that level.
Oh yeah.
You can't just make the story you want to make and then everything's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, you got to
And
find an audience for it.
yeah, and it's that business side of it that is going to help you to achieve those goals. And sometimes you really can try to create the story you want more than anything in the world, but it turns out that a lot of people maybe aren't there for it.
Hmm.
So you have to find an angle to switch it up, something that'll resonate with people.
Right.
But so getting back to your characters and creating them, how does that usually happen? What's the ideation process for you when you're coming up with characters and stories?
You know, there is no one way. I'm more freeform. As I said, I get a lot of ideas when I let my mind roam. Sitting by the water, fishing, or having a cigar out back. Those kind of things where I'm by myself, and I can just let my entire idea for giant-sized two-fisted manly tails happen on my patio. I was out there one afternoon. I came up with the title for it, and the title just sold itself. Uh, and I knew it was going to be an anthology book, and I just got on the phone and started calling guys. I said, "What would you think about doing this kind of thing?" And they're like, "Yeah, let's do this." And so that was one that just took off like wildfire, like that. The Canoe, the idea for that story, I was driving my daughter into the city of Buffalo, and going by Lake Erie as a storm was coming in over the lake, and I was looking at these ominous black clouds over this ocean of water, frozen water actually.
It's
And I thought,
crazy. I've seen that happen. Oh my lord, it's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, it's you don't realize how big the Great Lakes are. There's no horizon. I mean, it's just as big as an ocean.
Yeah,
Um, and seeing those dark clouds coming across it, I thought to myself, what if that storm brought something with it? I sort of like tapped into The Fog, the John Carpenter film, where the fog brought in these ghosts, and then I came across this ice monster type idea. Because after I dropped my daughter off, I went to a coffee shop. I sat down, got on the internet, and I started looking for ice creatures and stuff in myth. And I discovered the Canoe, which is part of a Native American myth. And so I started to develop it from that. So again, it's one of these things, that leads, you know, um, taps into things that I love, movies I've seen, uh, and real life things that just trigger ideas. You
yeah.
know,
It's just like a melting pot of
yeah,
everything Graham
yeah,
Nolan.
yeah. I mean, Alien Alamo came about because I wanted to do the Rifleman.
Mm,
This is one of my favorite TV shows. It was
Chuck
in the
Connors.
Western. Yeah, Chuck Connors. Um, and I love the relationship of his father, the father and son, and primarily because it's so different than every relationship you see on TV today. It was a respectful relationship. It was a widowed father trying to raise his son in a violent world, and but they always respected each other and loved each other, and it was just this really great relationship. So uh, I just threw that into a sci-fi background, uh, and that's how that one came up.
Well, man, speaking of which, Cole King wants you to know, as a new father, I really struggled with how my past issues were affecting my parenting. I read Alien Alamo at my lowest point, and it really helped me get my mind right and rise above my issues. Thank you.
Wow, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you so much, Cole King.
There you go. You never know. You never know. The stuff that we're creating and putting out in the world, you never know how it'll affect people and what it might mean to them at the right time. And that's great to
Exactly.
hear.
That's the magic of it.
Absolutely. And I love, obviously, I love the Chinook because of the fact that it's a cryptid. It's this folklore. It's this legend. I love the concept even within the Chinook itself. The
Hmm.
fact that it is so insatiable for human flesh that it eats off its own lips. And you got him in the back. You're gonna be okay there, Graham? He's looking a little
Yeah.
hungry.
Wait, he loves me.
There you go.
See, the Chinook eats hearts. So, yum, 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 yum.
That's fantastic, man. I
Yeah.
need a king cryptid like that. Goodness gracious.
Those will be going up on my website in October.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. How much are they going to be? Do you want to disclose that?
I have. Well, they're going to be sold as a package with some other goodies, and I'm putting all that together to figure out what the price point's going to be.
Okay. Very nice. So in October, what's the
Mhm.
website?
Compasscomics.com.
All right. Keep your eyes peeled for compasscomics.com. Get that
There it
Chinook
is,
plushie
right
in
there.
October.
There it is, right
Ah,
there.
yeah, right there. Nice. Man, oh man. All right, so we're going to take a quick little break here. We're at the halfway point. My guest tonight is Graham Nolan. This is episode 66 of Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti. We're going to take a quick break to show a trailer. I wonder what trailer. Maybe it's Graham's trailer. Stay tuned. We'll be back in 1 minute. All right, welcome back. And the link to Ghosts of Matacumba Key is in the description of the show, so go check that out.
Yeah, you need the link because that's one of my shadow banned projects.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that one got shadow banned 1 month after it started.
I don't understand it. I don't understand it. What gives?
Yeah, they didn't shadow ban either Joe Frankenstein Part 1 or Part 2. I can't figure it out. But the irony is, it's my most successful campaign ever.
Maybe that's what they're trying to do. They're like, hey, if we shadow ban them, they become more successful.
That's it. Thank
Let's
you,
keep
IGG.
shadow banning them. They're trying to help everybody out. Oh, good grief. Oh, man. So, with your universe that you're building up, what's the best way to describe this to the readers that are coming in and also the readers that are already here in terms of how they're connected, maybe where they should start, all that kind of stuff?
Well, I've been leaving breadcrumbs throughout my stories that this is a shared universe. If you remember in the Chinook, there's a sequence where Doubting Thomas, there's a Native American guy that's holed up in the house, and he's telling the story of the Chinook as he remembers his father telling him it. And the Doubting Thomas in the house says, "Oh, come on, you believe that old chestnut? I'll bet you believe the story about the kid and the monster living in the grain elevators." Well, that's clearly a reference to Joe Frankenstein, because that took place in Buffalo, the same place that the Chinook took place, and so that's a clear reference to it. In Alien Alamo, if you look at the last page and read some of the things on the iPad in the last panel, there's some breadcrumbs there, connecting the universes together. And then because there's a mention of Monster Island in there. Again, it's oblique. You're not gonna, It's not going to say, "Oh, Monster Island." It just references something, and it's one of those, if you know, you know. And so with the coming of the Ghost of Matacumba Key, this is the book that ties it all together. So it's no longer going to be veiled. It will be clearly these are all in the same universe, because there's some sequences that are going to happen which will make that abundantly clear.
Wow, man. Are you gonna have a book where we're gonna see a lot of these characters finally meet? Is there gonna be like a crossover kind of a thing happening?
Well, I don't know where they'll all meet, but there is going to be books where they're going to be characters are going to be in and out, or actually part of the story. Um, I can't tell you what it is, because if I tell you, that's going to blow the ending. So,
Yeah. You
but
don't you
there
don't
is
need to
one
give
coming
anything
up.
away.
Yeah, there is one coming up.
Oh, very nice, man. That's great.
Yeah,
I love
it's
seeing
fun.
that occur within the creator-owned aspect of things, because I find that oftentimes when we're doing this kind of stuff on our own, we often think so small about it. Everything becomes super myopic, right? Everything's like, just tell the one story and then that's it. And if people like it, okay, great. There's never, it feels for a lot of creators, they don't bother thinking even of a long-term situation, because they're so just focused in on like, let me just get the one thing done.
Hmm.
And then later on, if they've experienced any success with it, they start thinking like, oh man, I kind of should have put some stuff in there, similar to what you were talking about, to put these little Easter eggs, little breadcrumbs that can allude to something else and have a way to tie it all together and work it in. And I
Hmm.
love seeing that you're doing that, because I think that's part of what makes comics so unique and so fun. I think we're seeing movies really, really work hard to do something that comes so naturally and so effortlessly to comics.
Right.
This universe aspect, And I think a big reason with the movies, and I mean, feel free to either interject or just be like, no, I don't think that's it, or give your own spin. I think a big reason is just flat out the fact that there's human beings involved and they age.
Mm.
Whereas in the comic, you can keep having these stories play out, 10, 20 years, and they're relatively ageless,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. It's one of the beauties of comics. Is that, and it's also one of the downfalls, in that, like, for example, Spider-Man. The aspect of Spider-Man that made him so interesting was he was a kid. He was a high school kid. A kind of a nebbish loser, socially. Um, but then they aged him. They aged him up into college, and Steve Ditko was really against that. And then they've aged. Then he ends up marrying a supermodel. Then he has a kid, and he had a kid, didn't he? Yeah, I tapped
I
out on
I
Spider-Man a long
tapped
time
out
ago.
after that.
Yeah,
After the Clone Saga, I tapped out.
yeah, yeah. So I thought it was a huge mistake to have him marry Mary Jane. Um,
Oh,
yeah, uh, and age him that now he's a 20 something, close to 30 something year old guy. Um, it was so much more interesting to have him as a kid, and you could have kept him that way, um, and just updated the references to high school age kids, so that it's stayed relevant to the next crop of young people.
yeah. The thing I find that's interesting, and the same thing occurs with Dick Grayson into his transition to Nightwing, is the fact that it feels like some characters age, some characters progress,
Hmm.
and other characters stay frozen in time. Now, if they all kind of aged, if they all kind of progressed, especially if there was something established that was like, I don't know, let's say every issue is a week
Hmm.
in their life, so that if now there's however many 300 issues or whatever it is, it turns into, okay, that's X amount of years. But if you're talking about certain characters can age and others kind of are frozen in time, that's what makes it so awkward.
Hmm.
And then especially now when they're trying to do the mantle and this, everything's a friggin' mantle. The mantle of this and the mantle of that and whatever else. And it's awkward, and it really, I think, doesn't feel true, because of the fact that it doesn't. There's no real system here of what's aging and progressing in terms of these individuals as real people.
Well, the best
So
example you gave was Nightwing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden he's in his mid to late 20s, and Batman's the same age. I mean, because otherwise he'd be, pushing 40. Because Dick Grayson was what, 10, 12,
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, if you have these teenaged characters even and they're progressing now to, 25 to 30, now yeah, you have to age the other characters appropriately as well. So it's that kind of thing. I feel like some of it, yeah, I get it. Storytelling wise, okay, you could do a little bit more. You can kind of flex the storytelling muscles a bit more, but you got to do it across the board. And when they don't do it like that, and of course you have certain characters who maybe age slower, certain characters maybe who are immortal,
Hmm.
and they don't really age,
Right.
so
Like
that's
four.
that's something that could play out within the context of the comic.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that's what I love seeing when creator owned stuff comes in, because I feel like there's a chance when you're kind of making your own things, that you can almost like right the wrongs
Yeah,
of what
it's
occurred in
true.
the comics you loved.
Yeah, yeah. If you come across a plot hole or something that you didn't realize till after it got published, you can address it later.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. So for you, in terms of when you come up with your own stories and you're charting everything out, um, do you have not just within wanting to tie them together, but do you have an arc in mind in terms of how long a particular story will go on, or is every story unto itself, and then a new book comes along?
Every So far, everything has been self-contained. I want people to read my books and not feel like they got to buy a dozen other books. For the collectors that are into continuity and stuff, that's why I connect my universes, so that they can see these characters interacting in the same universe and eventually interacting together. But there is no larger arc, that these stories are dovetailing towards. I don't want to do that. Uh, that's I think, uh, that way lies madness.
Yeah,
You can make a lot of mistakes trying to do it that way. I'd much rather establish these characters, that exist in the same world, um, and that they might know of the other people, or they might not, or maybe there's just references that the readers will get to know that they're in there. It's just to tie it together, in a cohesive way and fun way.
yeah, yeah. I think that's the best way to go about it too. I love seeing it where you can jump in, enjoy the story you have. It's not necessarily dependent upon what came before, what's going to come after. But if you do read what came before, and if you do read what comes after, you
Right.
get even more out of the story.
Exactly. Exactly right. I understand why they do it, but it got to the point where, you're really not telling a story. You're creating this long form storytelling and telling this drawn out tale that goes, ad nauseum for 12 issues, when, Stan and Jack would have told it in one. They could have
I'm
told it, and it would have been much more exciting, you
so
know?
I'm guessing we're of a like mind about decompressed storytelling then.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, cut to the chase, get to it. I don't think it's fair, for the readers to have to, shell out, for book after book, if it's not their thing, or if it's no good. I'd rather concentrate on putting out a great story, that's self-contained, that people can go back to, and they don't got to go back to their long boxes and say, "Oh, I got to read this one first, and this one crosses over here," and all that kind of nonsense. You can take it off the shelf, read it, and say, "Oh, that was great." And, oh, look, there's a reference to the Shinu. I'm going to go read the Shinu now. I forgot about that. That type of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I like that a lot. I want to pick your brain about this. This has always bugged me about superhero comics, and I want your take on it.
Hmm.
When they would have, okay, you get Superman, you get Action Comics, you get Man of Steel, you got Adventures of Superman, you got you got all these different things: Spectacular Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man, and then goodness, I'm not even going to get into modern type of stuff. So where it's like everything's a miniseries, everything's a reboot, everything is, this,
True.
it's all over the place. Uh, that always infuriated me when I was collecting comics and reading comics as a kid. I went and I got them anyway because I liked the characters, I liked the stories that were being told.
Hmm.
But in terms of the continuity, in terms of the universe feel of it, it always felt disjointed to me. It always felt strange that during the course of the same thing happening, now there's also this other thing and he's somewhere else and they're doing something else here. And it makes no sense because aren't they supposed to be here? And that was supposed to happen? So why do you feel that they did that they kind of felt the need to do that as opposed to condensing it and just making more issues per month and having the different creative teams on board?
Well, I'm not sure I understand because you mentioned like Action Comics and Superman and Adventures of Superman. Each one of those is different. Do you mean the fact that they all connected the
The
stories?
fact that like Superman would be in, I mean, Action Comics is a little bit more of like it's an anthology feel, so I kind of get that. But I guess the aspect of Man of Steel, Superman, Adventures of Superman, that kind of a thing,
Uh huh.
instead of just sticking to Superman and then putting that out 3 or 4 times a month.
Ah,
And even if you had to have different teams still to make that possible creatively, why
right.
create a separate title? Because I've heard the methodology is like, oh, this way the sales are across more books. You could sell more books that way. But I think you would honestly probably sell more books by just sticking to the one title, because then you'd also condense everything. You'd have this massive print run for a single title.
Hmm.
Everyone would be reading that title, talking about that title, and you would never have someone being like, "Oh, I don't really read that one. I'm reading this one."
Well, I
Yeah.
never thought about it like that, to be honest. And it's not a bad idea. Uh, but to play devil's advocate, what I used to like too was like I loved to read Amazing Spider-Man, but then when Marvel Team Up would come out, they would reference what happened in Amazing Spider-Man, like he was coming back from England, and then he ran into Power Man or whatever. Um, so there was a reference to it. So again, it was that uh, that universe that was shared. But now it's just a different story of Spidey, doing this in between the other stories. I kind of like that. There's also the aspect of there's usually a sort of a different structure or thematic view um, for each one of the books. For example, obviously, Detective Comics, we told stories that focused on Batman as a detective, whereas Doug and Kelly doing Batman, they focused on the supervillains and the superheroics or superhero aspects of Batman. Shadow of the Bat, that was I believe that one was the more psychological one where they got into more in-depth stuff. So each one had a little bit of a different take or different theme,
Mm.
at least in the Bat universe.
Yeah, I think the Batman books did it the best, to be honest. And I'm not just saying that because of who's on the show.
Who might argue with you?
Because that's honestly where I felt the difference was there.
Hmm.
Detective, like you talked, it felt like detective stuff, crime. It was way
Hmm.
more kind of grounded stories.
Yeah.
And that feel was throughout, and I felt that really worked. They got it for some reason with Batman and what they were doing. They got it, but there was a lot of other ones, and more particularly so at I felt at Marvel, and I loved Marvel, but it was that kind of stuff drove me nuts, where I felt like this is all. It just feels like the same things. Particularly the Spider-Man books all felt like the same kind of thing. It was just
Hmm.
it's just Spider-Man doing Spider-Man stuff,
Right.
and yeah. So, but I did love those things too, like the Marvel Team Up and the other kind of side books. It was more that the books within the character's universe in it of itself. It felt like, do you really need just to pile on the adjectives for the hero or whoever,
Right.
instead of just release like 8 a month, of the same book, and be at issue 2000 something. Who cares? Make it just coming at you fast and furious, 8 titles a month or whatever.
Right.
8 issues a month. But yeah, that was, I just always wanted to pick someone's brain about that.
That's a logistical nightmare, though, to like you said, hire different teams to do, like just call it Batman comics, and it comes out once a week, and one team does it, and so that in 4 weeks you've got the first team back on it, but now it's still all the continuity of Batman, so you've got 4 issues in 1 month, 8 issues in 2 months, that type of thing. The writing would be a complete nightmare to do that.
Yeah, it'd be a real, like, you have to herd those cats.
Yeah, yeah.
You need like 10 gym shooters to keep it straight.
Oh my God. When we were doing Nightfall, it was very similar. The book came out every week, but it was a continuation. What happened to Detective continued over, or what happened to Batman continued over, and Detective went to Shadow of the Bat, went to Robin, went to Catwoman occasionally, that kind of stuff, and then returned to Batman. So, all these stories had, in arcs and connectivity aspects of the stories, had to be worked out ahead of time. And there's a few flops there, but mostly, we did it. But boy, oh boy, you break one domino, and your schedule goes.
Yeah, yeah. The thing is, I wonder if, and yes, it is in Ronin. Just give it to Dixon.
Yeah. Well, Chuck definitely helped
writer.
keep all that stuff going.
Yeah.
I mean, we were the fastest team. So there, stuff happened in Batman before Detective, but there was stuff I would design for the Batman crew to use because I was going to draw it first because I was ahead of them. Ancillary characters, locations, things like that I couldn't wait for them. So I would design the stuff and I would send it to them, and then they would follow my lead.
Well, I mean, I guess if only we had more Graham Nolans running around in comics.
Please, one is enough.
Oh boy, oh boy. That reminds me. You had a really great quote, like maybe 2 years ago. You had said something about in terms of, I'm going to butcher it, but it was something. But you probably correct.
I hope I
I'm
remember
going to
it.
butcher it. And it was about like like everyone wants a Graham Nolan, and then they don't want a Graham Nolan. It was like something like that you
Oh yeah. It actually came from an actor, David Huddleston, was talking about actors' careers, and I just modified it for comic artists because it was the same. And your career arc goes like this: who's Graham Nolan? Get me Graham Nolan. Get me a Graham Nolan. Who's Graham Nolan? That's the trajectory of
it's great. It's great, and I butchered the hell out of it, so I'm glad that you remembered it correctly. But yeah, when you had put that out there, I was like, man, that is so friggin' accurate.
It really is. When you're first starting out, nobody knows who you are. When you establish yourself, and people are looking for you, they want you, and then your rates get high enough to where they want somebody like you, but they don't want to have to pay them as much. And then there's the forgotten artist. Who is he? Never heard of him.
Yeah, the generation has passed. Whatever new hands are coming in, and they don't really know as much about. Yeah, man, oh man. And I think we're really seeing that right now in comics, where some people are like, "Who is that?" It's like, that dude's like a legend. What are you talking about? I mean,
well, the difference is that now I can get out there and promote myself.
Yeah.
Doing shows, doing my own YouTube channel and stuff like that, going on the Kings and the Professionals and your channel. I can get out there and show that I'm alive, that my work is viable, that I'm still working at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big help, and a lot of things have changed even just in my 17 years of making comics in terms of how to get out there and promote and talk about your books and engage with the readers and find new readers. There's so many things within the industry that are so antiquated at this point that are hurting more than helping, and for those things to be truly successful, they have to go back to the way it was 20, 30, 40 years ago in terms of distribution and marketing. And so it's so strange that, when we see this stuff happening within comics and they think that the key to getting more readers is to do what they've been doing, not understanding the key to get more readers is to actually show those readers that those books exist. And it's a big weird thing in comics where it's like they don't understand, I guess, that a lot of people don't realize that there's new comics being made.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done Barnes and Noble signings years ago, where people would come up, they think it's just a regular book signing, just a prose book, and they open it up and they're like, "This is a comic." And I'm like, "Yeah," and they go, almost half of them. The next question, the next follow up, "I didn't know they still made comics."
I know.
And these are all
Yeah.
people who they bought the book, they walked away with the book. They were all comic book readers growing up.
Right.
And they start talking to me about all the stuff they used to read. They used to be into this and that, and and
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, they still make them. They're just not really everywhere they used to be.
Right. Yeah. And that's sad because it's there. At a Barnes and Noble, you just steer them towards the graphic novel section. They can see all that stuff, and you hope that they'll buy it and get bit by the bug again. But that's one of my biggest beefs about distribution these days is that kids can't find it. You cannot find. If we're going to grow the industry, we have to get kids to read now so that they can read other stuff later on. And there's no entry level books for kids that aren't pedantic, and there's no place for them to discover them on their own. So if mom takes the kid to a comic shop, it's sort of like mom's thing, or dad's thing, oh, comics, that was my dad's thing, like Buick trying to rebrand itself.
You noticed that too, huh?
Yeah, but when a kid discovers it on their own, it becomes theirs.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's how it was for us. Yes, comics. My dad read comics as a kid because they were around the same way. The newspaper distribution was there. But when I discovered them, you could walk into a 7-Eleven or wherever there was a spinner rack or a magazine stand at a Subway. You'd see these brightly colored adventure stories, these comics, and you could discover it. And it was right next to everything else that was modern. And so when you bought that comic, you were thinking, yeah, I've discovered this universe. This is mine now. I own this. It's like, the kid today, the Beatles, that's my grandfather's music. I need to have, you name whoever the hot shit is right now. Like, that's who they like,
Yeah, exactly. Although, if they're anything like what I'm doing right now, I can't stand any of the stuff being made today, and I'm going back in the past well before my time and falling in love with all of that, and that's the new stuff to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm digging into 40s, 50s, 60s, and that kind of thing, and being like, oh my god, this stuff is great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because something is old doesn't mean it isn't well done. It isn't great. I just saw a movie from 1940 or 41 called The 49th Parallel. I'd never seen this movie before, and it was fascinatingly modern. The way they told the story, they told the story in 3 vignettes. And basically, the story is this Nazi sub gets sunk off the coast of Canada, and the submariners get to land, and they have to make their way across Canada, and they're causing all kinds of havoc as they do so. And they get discovered in each place they go, and they get run out and all that kind of stuff. And then it gets to the end, and they're about the one guy that's left is about to take this train and go over the bridge into the United States from Niagara Falls, and he's about to get away. And they shot this thing in the Canadian Rockies and stuff, so it's not sets, it's not backdrops or matte paintings, it's real stuff. Great film, 1940.
Yeah. So much great stuff, and not all of it I dig, but
Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of it that I do, and
Hmm.
whether it's comics, music, movies, whatever.
Hmm.
And I hope that eventually, as these generations grow up, they start doing the same thing, and they
I
start
hope
digging
they
back and
look
going,
beyond um, their own experiences,
yeah,
because what you get is, you talked about relatability earlier, and to modern writers, relatability means tweets,
buzzwords.
little buzz things, little gotchas, little all this. That's not writing. That's not dialogue. That's not something in depth, you know. And I just watched before we went on the air. My wife and I watched. Uh, they cloned Tyrone on Netflix, and I wanted to see this thing because it looked like a '70s blaxploitation sci-fi comedy. Had
Hmm.
Has John Boyega in it and Jamie Foxx, um, and I've been looking forward to seeing this thing. And it was a complete letdown. You know,
Oh,
it's like the writers didn't understand what made those blaxploitation films
it's not like
fun and
Black Dynamite.
interesting, huh?
You ever see Black Dynamite?
That's a modern version, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I
With
did
Michael
see
Jai
that.
White.
Oh no, no, I didn't see that. I didn't see that one. No.
Oh, you gotta look at that. They do that. They do black exploitation so well in Black Dynamite. Michael Jai White, and his whole crew. They eventually did like a cartoon as well that was on Adult Swim, but the movie, it's live action, and it's even shot with the grainy look of
Oh
the
yeah,
film from the '70s, and
yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
the boom mic gets in the way, and
Oh jeez.
it's fantastic, and the humor is spot on. And then they're doing something now too called like oh man, I forget the name, but he just came out with the trailer the other day. It's like a western mixed with like black exploitation,
Oh, okay, cool.
and yeah, it looks great too. So check that out
Yeah,
if you're looking for something that's solid with that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean the writing in some of these older films. I just got done watching a bunch of '70s films like Marathon Man and The Boys from Brazil. Um,
Yeah,
these really well written. I mean, uh, William Goldman wrote Marathon Man. Um, just fantastic stuff. Great dialogue, real great tension, amazing actors, um, literate stories, not just fluff pieces, that
yep.
passes off as drama.
Oh boy, oh boy. All right, so before we go, I want to ask you one important question. Actually, it's two.
Okay.
What what's the future for Graham Nolan look like within comics, and what do you think the future of comics looks like? And I'll say 5 to 10 years. We don't have to go too far.
Yeah. Well, the first question, the future for me is to continue on and continue to grow Compass Comics. Um, build my backers, um, uh, and build my library of characters. That's my goal. The future of comics, I think, is I'm not a naysayer, so I think it's good because when more and more people start to realize you can do this if you have the work ethic to do it, because crowdfunding and self-publishing is a lot of work. You have to wear a lot of different hats that you didn't have to when you worked as a freelancer, as a penciler or inker or a writer or whatever. You got to do it all, and you got to know your business. You got to understand who your customers are, and give them the kind of comics that they expect you to deliver to them. Um, and that means the genres and the styles and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of work, but it's infinitely better than working for somebody else because you're working for yourself. You own everything, and if we can continue to do that, and at the same time build um, the readership base, which is going to be key, because I'm betting most of the folks that are watching our YouTube shows and stuff like that are probably in their 40s and 50s, maybe 30s, 40s, and 50s. But we need to get 18-year-olds starting in comics so that they can go on for another 30 years, and continue to read. So, that's going to be the hard part, is figuring out how to get eyeballs on our products to younger readers. But I'm working on it.
Man, and that's why at Alterna too, this month up until the 25th, we have Alternaween. And Alternaween is basically an initiative that we started about 5 years ago, where you can purchase a bundle of comics from us. It's about $20 for a bundle of 25 comics. You get these all ages books and give them out as trick or treats on Halloween. And we have a bunch of people every year that hand out these comics, thousands of comics to kids across the country as trick or treats. They get candy and a comic book on Halloween night, and for a lot of these kids, it's their first ever comic. I mean, imagine that, right? You get your first ever comic book on Halloween, and who knows, maybe in 10 or 20 years or whatever, we're seeing an amazing comic creator talk about their story one day,
Right.
and say, yeah, my first comic, yeah, I got it as a trick or treat on Halloween. It was this Alterna Comics thing. Like, and that's what I just love about the fact that that's a possibility.
Yeah.
And statistically, it's gonna happen. There's been thousands of kids across the country that have received these comics year after year. We can't do this without the readers. So, if you guys want to back that project for us to get these comics in your hands, so you can get them to the kids on Halloween, you can go to alternacomics.com. You can go to Fund My Comic, or you can go to Indiegogo. We've got that project, that campaign on all three platforms. But other than that, man, thank you so much, Graham. Thank you, everybody in the chat as well.
Absolutely.
I think we
Did I just address a few questions that I saw in the chat here, Pete?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to bring up this one, actually, about... I don't know if this was one of the ones that you saw, but...
Yeah, that was one, Jasper. Well, you got 3 this year. You got Joe 1, Joe 2, and you're going to get Ghost of Metacumba Key. So that's 3 this year. Possibly 4, because I might be releasing Return to Monster Island as well. If not, then there'll be probably 2 for next year. But it takes time when you're a one-man show, writing and illustrating everything, to put it out. So plus all the promotional stuff you got to do, the streaming and all that. So actual new content is very hard to do, more than 1 or 2 a year. But I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And the other thing, people were asking me, when am I going to be back on the Kings? I've taken a hiatus from all streaming. This is a do-over for Pete, because I canceled out on him before I went into my hiatus. So, the only show I've been doing is The Professionals, because I'm a plank owner on that one. So I feel obligated to do that. But the reason I stopped streaming on the Kings and doing my own shows is because I need to buckle down and get pages done for Ghost of Metacumba Key. The 2 Joe Frankenstein campaigns put me 2 months behind on that book, but it was really important that those books got released, and you'll see why when you get the Ghosts in your hands. So that's the reason I haven't been on the Kings. It's not because there's any drama or anything. It's just it was a self-imposed exile so that I could focus on my deadlines and get the work done. So that's the answer to that.
Yeah. It's we all have so many things going on, and sometimes it's like certain things happen in the schedule, and you just gotta, I just gotta focus. Because I'm like that too when it comes to like fulfillment time on campaigns. It's so difficult. I'm trying my best, but sometimes I'm just like, nope, I gotta just focus on that. I just gotta get stuff out today. So
the way I look at it, my first obligation is to my backers.
Absolutely,
they're the ones that are supporting me, and they deserve the best work that I can give them. So I don't want to crank it out because of some self-imposed deadline that I promised it on this date or something like that. It'll be worth the wait. I've never missed any of my deadlines before, but this one is obviously out of my control because the other 2 things took precedence, and I hadn't planned on that. But we'll get there. I'm moving along. I just finished page 44 today. So I think I've got 12, 44. It says 3, 44, 47, 3. I got 13 pages left.
There you go. Very nice.
13 pages left on the main story. So we're getting there, kids. We're getting there.
Fantastic, man.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys didn't back the Ghosts of Matacumba Key yet, go check it out. It's on Indiegogo. The link is in the description, and it's also in the chat. We got Past Master Dan putting it up there, and I've got it up here right now too. And it looks like Graham is $180 away from 181K.
Yeah.
Look at that.
The more interesting number for me is the backer number,
Totally.
2331.
That's great.
That's the most amount of backers I've had on any of my books. So I'm very pleased and thankful for all you guys that either returned to the Compass Comics fold or are first runs here and new. So really appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. And Graham, thank you as well for taking time out of your super, super busy schedule to chat with me for an hour or so.
It's always a pleasure, Pete.
Absolutely, man. It was a blast. We'll have to do when your schedule frees up, I would love to just do a nostalgia show with you, talking about Westerns, talking about...
Oh, that'd be fun. Let's do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. But yeah, back to work for you, man. You got a book to make.
Slave driver.
Everyone, take it easy. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. I got Joe Catapano on the show, 9 o'clock Eastern. Graham, it was wonderful having you on tonight. All the best. I hope you reach 200K and 3,000 backers on that campaign. That would be incredible.
That would be. Many thanks, brother.
Yeah, keep it up. And everybody, go check out whatever Graham Nolan is doing. It's always good stuff. You know it. And I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Everyone, take it easy.
See you guys.